Do you guys remember the international government organization Anti-Boycott Act? It was a piece of legislation that was going through the Congress in the United States that would make it illegal and criminal to boycott Israel. It was pulled in the last minute, but what interests me is why it was pulled and how that is connected to the risks that Israel has been taking with its strategy of dancing with the devil. And by which I mean leveraging on aligning themselves with far-right groups and far-right governments around the world. Because this symbiotic relationship between the far right that is keen to erase its anti-Semitic past and an Israel that is keen to receive any support that it can, in one twisted way, makes sense because parties like the Alternative für Deutschland, like the Front National, no, I'm not going to call them any other thing, like Fidesz, like the Republican Party in the United States, have sections that are heavily anti-Semitic, but that are keen to use anti-Semitism as a wedge to inflate anti-Muslim hatred. While we know from historical experience that they do not want Jewish people in their countries, that doesn't seem to be a big concern for Israel because Israel wants all of the Jewish people to relocate from wherever they are to Israel, to be able to further validate and increase their existence as an ethnostate. That has risks because anti-Semites are going to anti-Semite, no matter how much you bribe them not to. Case in point, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Remember the American congresswoman who was speaking about Jewish space lasers? So she received funding from AIPAC. But she was also one of the loudest voices in the MAGA movement that stopped the Republican Party from passing that resolution that would have criminalized boycotting Israel. She wasn't the only one. Because we see the MAGA movement as something coherent, and it isn't. It is a large tent of different far-right flavors, from eugenicists to populists to nativists, techno-libertarians to American first non-interventionists. Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't alone in voicing her opinion. She was being supported by Steve Bannon, by Matt Gaetz, who, despite of the fact that he's no longer a congressman, still has some hold in the MAGA movement, by people like Tucker Carlson, the latter of which has actually stated that pro-Israeli forces were trying to derail the efforts for peace between Iran and the United States. None of these things are being done for the love of Palestinians. They are being done due to skepticism of American interventions abroad and the amount of money that Israel receives. So I urge you to watch this space and remember that Israel isn't in the front of the queue when it comes to the negotiations of tariffs, and that Linda McMahon, in her latest letter to Harvard University, featured less of anti-Semitism than she did before. And remember that saying, when you dance with the devil, you don't get to pick the tune.